3. The decision to search for awakening. I also, monks, before the awakening, while still an unawakened bodhisattva, being myself subject to birth, sought out what was subject to birth. Being myself subject to old age, sought out what was subject to old age. Being myself subject to sickness, sought out what was subject to sickness. Being myself subject to death, sought out what was subject to death. Being myself subject to grief, sought out what was subject to grief. Being myself subject to defilements, sought out what was subject to defilements. Then, monks, this occurred to me. Why, being myself subject to birth, do I seek out what is subject to birth? Being myself subject to old age, do I seek out what is subject to old age? Being myself subject to disease, do I seek out what is subject to disease? Being myself subject to death, do I seek out what is subject to death? Being myself subject to grief, do I seek out what is subject to grief? Being myself subject to defilement,